Okay, I'd like to call the regular city commission meeting of Tuesday, December 10th, 2024 to order and ask all of you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call. Mayor Pro Tem Olsman.
Present.
Commissioner Rozelle.
Present.
Commissioner Steinhardt.
Present.
Commissioner Elder is excused this evening. Mayor Paul present. Approval of the agenda. Actually, we have a couple of changes to the agenda. The first item is being deleted because Nate could not be here this evening. And we're adding, as item number 8, the library surveillance system. So do we have a motion to approve as amended?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Communications, we do not have any communications in our packet this month, but I would like to comment on communications that the commission has received via phone calls and emails regarding an incident on Humber, south of 11 Mile Road, regarding destruction of private property. The city of Huntington Woods is outraged by the anti-Semitic attack on the home of University of Michigan Regent Jordan Acker. Anti-Semitism in any form is unacceptable. We want Regent Acker and his family to know that he is not alone, they are not alone, that your community is with you, and we will continue to stand with you. For those that are not aware, at approximately 2 a.m. on Monday, December 9th, our public safety department responded to an incident. A vehicle was spray painted with graffiti and objects were thrown through the front window of the home. The case is being investigated by our department in cooperation with other local, state, and federal agencies. The Michigan Attorney General's office sent an investigator, as well as the Federal Bureau of Investigation has sent 5 or 6 officers both yesterday and then again today to assist in the investigation. The neighborhood has been canvassed and security camera footage has been retrieved that is helping in the investigation. A neighbor's video showed 2 suspects, both wearing dark colored hooded sweatshirts, pulled over their heads walking southbound, stopping at the victim's home, and after a short period running back northbound towards 11 Mile Road. Other camera footage that has been collected has identified a possible car that was used, and work is continuing to identify that vehicle and the owner. Cell phone use is also being traced because perpetrators of other related incidents have posted video to social media. Although this appears to be a targeted attack, as other University of Michigan regents were also targeted, as a precaution, the city, as well as our neighboring communities, have stepped up patrols. We do ask that as residents, if you see something unusual or suspicious, please say something. Our Huntington Woods Public Safety Department can be reached at 248-541-1180. Please remember, it's okay to be angry. It's not okay to hate. Hate will destroy us. Anger motivates us to make change. Thank you. If we have any elected officials in the room, so we'll move on to public participation. Public participation is an opportunity for the public to address the city commission for an item or issue not on the agenda. Those wishing to address the commission should step to the podium, state their name and address for the record. It would also be helpful to give your name and contact information to the city clerk if you'd like to receive follow-up correspondence. In general, members of the public get one opportunity to speak during this portion of the meeting. There's no coming back to the podium to make follow-up or additional comments. Generally, public comments are not a dialogue. This means neither the city commission nor staff will engage in a question and answer session or back and forth discussion with the speaker. However, the mayor may ask the city manager or city staff to answer questions if possible, or to gather more information regarding the subject and continue the discussion with the concerned party outside of the meeting. Please come forward if you.
My name is Mark Shostak, and I'm here with my wife Lillian. We moved to Huntington Woods in 1991. I can't believe how long we've been here. We raised 4 of our children, and in fact, one of our adult children moved to Huntington Woods just recently, so that gives us a lot of knowledge, a lot of joy, and certainly it says a lot about Huntington Woods that the kids that grow up here move into Huntington Woods just right around from their parents' house. So really the purpose of me coming tonight is just very concerned about city properties, okay, including the library and Bergman Field, being used for what we view as very political events. And we don't think, or at least Lily and I can let others that are here speak for themselves, we don't think city property should be used for political events. What it's doing to this community is creating a level of divisiveness. I think we've always prided ourselves in Huntington Woods of being a community of a lot of harmony. We all kind of feel we all love each other and we all get along with one another. That's what makes Huntington Woods such a very unique community and a very special place. And we feel that these folks that are putting on these events are creating divisions in the community and a certain amount of anxiety. And I think given the level of anti-Semitism in this country that we've been experiencing, I think it's incumbent upon the city not to allow these political events that are very one-sided and from our perspective, very inciting to us. These events make us feel threatened, make us feel unwelcome, and that's not what Huntington Woods is all about. So I'd like to urge this city and this council to reassess whether or not you allow this group to use city property for their political activities and their political advocacy. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, thanks for being here. I'm Ron Yolis, 13124 Vernon Avenue. My wife, Laura Hirschhorn, began living in Huntington Woods somewhere around 1975. She convinced me to be here, and I'm thrilled she did. Mayor Paul, I want to react favorably to every word in your statement about the really what I would call a terrorist hate crime on Humber the other night at our neighbor Jordan Acker's house. I want to have humility that I don't want to pretend I have answers to what is going on. As a citizen, I want to speak up for what I see and would ask that you consider that. And I would be happy to be a resource, and I think anybody here would be happy to be a resource if dialogue would be helpful. And I want to support every single word that my friend Mark shared in his talk. And the things, and I'm going to be brief, And the things I'm going to talk about are hard to discern. And under normal conditions would be things we don't have to worry about to have a harmonious community. But the things that are going on here in Huntington Woods, with a careful reading, unfortunately are happening all over this country. And they relate to anti-Semitic incidents. And some of these are easy to see. If someone defaces Regent Acker's home and throws glasses and incendiary things into his home and defaces his wife's car, that we can see. Other things are more subtle, but as Mark was suggesting, they can create the climate, even with some well-meaning people supporting those events, but maybe naively, that creates a climate that leads to some of these other events. And let me say, I'm also in favor, Mayor Paul, you mentioned about, unfortunately, what's happening in the country. There has to be police patrols, because we could sit down together and it's likely going to happen again. And if we did sit down together, we could pinpoint likely some of our fellow citizens who would be most likely to have this sort of thing happen to them. And so how do we connect up some of these events with the groups called Huntington Woods Citizens for a Ceasefire, and even a group ironically named Jewish Voice for Peace? Some of us would suggest is sort of a cruel play on words, come into our community, and when they're renting the Huntington Woods Library or Burton Field, if I were to rent the Huntington Woods Library or Burton Field, it would be for either my 23 or 15-year-old daughter's birthday party or a family picnic. And when they come to apply for these events, and I'm not sure how detailed their completion of their application is, but the result of the events, as Mark eloquently suggested, creates a climate where it's only one step removed. And this is the third time that Regent Acker has been attacked by an act of vandalism and terrorism, twice in his home and once in his office building. It's not fair. So I don't know the answers, but we see and feel the connectivity when keffiyeh-clad people in Burton Park are espousing thinly veiled slogans that are of a foreign policy nature. Again, we're more concerned with the roads and the community, not people chanting things that directly could be attributed to the end of the state of Israel, which is one of the United States allies, or growing hate. So again, I don't know answers, but these events seem outside the purview of public space, and I think there are other communities in the United States who have taken action not to have these political events in their community, even if they are thinly veiled as picnics or discussions. So I appreciate your thoughtfulness.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public participation and move on to our regular items of business. And we're going to start with the presentation of our 2023-24 financial statements presented by our city auditors.
Thank you. My name is Aaron Stevens. I'm a partner with Maynard Costerison. I'd like to start out, I did pass out the handout. It's a presentation handout. I did not duplicate the financial statements. I've got a set here if you've got a particular question, but I pulled out some information out of the report.
There's more in the back if you guys want to follow along.
And put together some charts and graphs. But I'd like to start out and just thank everyone here at City Hall for their courtesy, cooperation, and assistance, especially Ethan. I know he puts a lot of hard work into this, and we ruin his week. So I'll apologize for the disruption because we do appreciate all the help that we received while we were here. What I plan to do is highlight what I think are the key areas of the financial statements, the ACFR, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. But if you've got questions, stop me at any time and we can go through those. On page number 2 of the presentation handout, the Independent Auditor's Report is presented on pages 14 through 16 of the report on the financial statements. And I always like to remind everyone that the purpose or objective of an audit is to express opinions on the financial statements. The purpose of an audit is not to detect fraud or give you an opinion on your internal control. And that is because fraud detection, deterrence, and prevention, as well as sound internal control, are management responsibilities. If we detect fraud, if we find fraud, or have recommendations on how to improve your internal control, we certainly would share that with you in a separate report on internal control, but that report is a byproduct of the audit itself. So again, the purpose of the audit is to express opinions on your financial statements. On page 3 of the handout, there are 3 types of opinions we could express. The opinions are provided in the second paragraph on page 14 of the report on the financial statements, and we have expressed unmodified opinions on your financial statements. And you can tell that they are unmodified opinions because it reads, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. It doesn't actually use the word unmodified, but that present fairly in all material respects is the important phrase, and that's the highest level of assurance that we can provide for a set of financial statements. A qualified opinion might read something like, except for capital assets, the financial statements are fairly presented. An adverse opinion is when they're not fairly presented, and then the only other alternative that we have as auditors would be to disclaim the opinion altogether. We couldn't audit your records. So obviously of the choices, the options that we have, you have what you're looking for in the unmodified opinions. That's what you want to see as a board. In the 4th paragraph on page 14, we highlight that management is responsible for the financial statements, and that does include the preparation and fair presentation of financial statements. It also includes the internal control over that preparation and fair presentation. In the 1st paragraph on page 15, again, just highlighting what I think are the key parts of the independent auditor's report. As I said, our objective is to express opinions on the financial statements. And what that means is we are to provide reasonable assurance or obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. So it is not absolute assurance, and it is not all misstatement. We don't look at every single transaction. We make sample selections. We test your internal controls, and that, as the results of those testing of internal controls, determines what further audit procedures we will perform. But we don't look at everything. You wouldn't want to pay us to look at everything. So. Your financial report, your report on the financial statements does include 2 sets of financial statements. You've got government-wide financial statements, and then you have fund-level financial statements. The government-wide financial statements are presented on pages 28 and 29 of that report. Government-wide financial statements are prepared on the full accrual basis of accounting, which means they have a long-term perspective primarily, and they're prepared once a year. The only time you see government-wide financial statements is in that audit report. So I don't have a lot on this, but I do have a couple of metrics that I like to look at that I've written down. Your government-wide financial statements are broken into 2 categories, 2 sets of activities. You got governmental activities and you have business type activities. When you look at the governmental activities, I look at liquidity. If you take your current assets and divide it by your current ratios, or current assets divided by current liabilities, you come up with your current ratio. And for governmental activities, it's just over 2. So what that means is you can cover your current obligations nearly 2 times, or a little more than 2 times over as of June 30th. I also like to look at a longer-term metric, which would include looking at the unrestricted net position compared to your expenses. In this case, your governmental activities have a negative unrestricted net position, but that is due to the amount of the long-term debt, net pension liability, and net OPEB liability that is reported. Those are all long-term items. You don't see those in the fund level financial statements. But a couple of notes, your pension is 68% funded, your OPEB is 65% funded, and your long-term debt as of June 30th was about $24 million. So for governmental activities. You did, for the fiscal year, you added $3.2 million to your total net position. So it improved. even though the ending net position is still negative. For the business type activities, you added $507,000 to your total net position. And the business type activities presents the same information that you see in your proprietary funds, your enterprise funds. So I'm going to talk about that more in a minute when we talk about the fund level financial statements. The governmental funds financial statements are presented on pages 30 and 32, and governmental fund financial statements are prepared using the modified accrual basis of accounting. So this is a current financial resources focus. So again, you won't see those long-term items on the balance sheet, such as your long-term debt, your capital assets, your net pension liability, and so forth. Fund level financial statements should be a more familiar presentation for you because that's the level at which your budgets are prepared, and the interim reporting that you get throughout the year is all done at the fund level. On page 8 of the handout, the governmental funds balance sheet is presented on page 30. The balance sheet is a snapshot as of June 30th, 2024 of your assets, your liabilities, and the difference between the two would be your fund balances. I tend to look at the general fund as the operating fund for the city. Total fund balance as of June 30th, about $4.2 million. That 4.2 is broken down into 5 potential classifications, as you can see in the center of the slide there. You happen to report, the city of Huntington Woods happens to report amounts in 4 of those classifications. You don't have any assigned fund balance in your general fund. But when I look at the health of the general fund, I consider the assigned and unassigned portions of your fund balance, and refer to that as unrestricted, because you can assign an unassigned fund balance with a budget amendment, management's indication, earmarking, can assign fund balance. You don't happen to have any as of June 30th, but your unassigned fund balance is $2.2 million for the general fund. Comparing that to your expenditures and your other financing uses, in this case transfers out to other funds, if you take your $2.2 million of unassigned fund balance and divide it by your expenditures and transfers out, you had expenditures of about $6.2 million and transfers out of just over $3 million. That unassigned or unrestricted fund balance represents approximately 24% of your annual expenditures. The GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, recommends that you maintain a minimum fund balance in your general fund that is equal to 2 months of normal operations. 2 out of 12 months is about 17%. You're sitting at about 24. So you're in good shape in the general fund. It's very healthy. On page 9 of the handout, sticking with the general fund theme, total revenues for the year about $9.4 million. That was an increase of about 7% from the 2023 revenues. Property taxes were up about $435,000, and your investment performance was much better. That was up about $114,000. On the expenditure side, expenditures of about $6.2 million. That also increased about 8%. General government was up about $130,000. Public works, $91,000. Recreation and culture, $174,000. Your transfers out to other funds or your other financing uses, at just over $3 million. That also was an increase from the previous year. The result of that, all of those items, you added to your fund balance $134,385. In 2023, you added $182,871. To give you a visual perspective, on page 10 of the handout, general fund 5-year trends, total revenues, total expenditures, and total fund balance. You added to your general fund balance for the past 5 years. So you did use a little bit, just a slight bit of fund balance in 2022. But again, sound financial condition. In terms of the composition of your general fund revenue, on page 11 of the handout, property taxes, very important to the city. It's 79% of your revenue. Biggest piece there. Intergovernmental revenue at 9%. That would include any state shared revenue, sales tax, any federal, state, and or local revenue that comes into the city would be considered intergovernmental, primarily sales tax. On page 12, the composition of the general fund expenditures. Public safety was at 34%, transfers out at 33%, and then general government at 19%. Very consistent with the 2023 composition of expenditures for the general fund. Page 13, 5-year line graph here of the general fund, unassigned or unrestricted fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. It's leveled off the last couple of years. It's been fairly consistent. So a low of 20% in 2020, and a high of 28% in 21. And as I said, it's at about 24% as of June 30, 2024. Page 14 is the same information, just in terms of dollars instead of percentages. The blue line is the actual dollar amount. The orange line is the 17% or 2 months worth of operations. Just again, a visual perspective there. Your proprietary funds are presented on pages 34 through 36. Proprietary funds also use the full accrual basis of accounting, just like the government-wide financial statements. And as I said, your business type activities would be the same information that you see in your water and sewer fund. You have one enterprise fund, it's the water and sewer fund, so that is the same as the business type activities. It's a different format, more detail, but it's the same information. On page 16, a similar slide, I guess, if you will. A snapshot, the statement of net position is the balance sheet in a proprietary fund, so it's a snapshot as of June 30th, 2024. You have assets, deferred outflows, which are similar to assets, liabilities, and deferred inflows, which are similar to liabilities. The net of those four would be your net position. In an enterprise fund, well, let me back up. Total net position for the water and sewer fund, about $8.5 million. That $8.5 million can be broken into three potential classifications in net position. You don't happen to have any restricted, but you do have amounts that are invested in capital assets, net of any related debt, and then the balance would be unrestricted. I compare that unrestricted net position of about $1.9 million to your expenses, and then your operating expenses, but in this case I factor out depreciation, because depreciation is a non-cash expense. So taking that $1.9 million, dividing it by your operating expenses, it comes out to about 79%. But you can't look at an enterprise fund financial health the same way you would a governmental fund because of the difference in the basis of accounting. So using the full accrual basis of accounting at 79%, you would look at that and say, well, that's really high because you just said 17% was the minimum. You start with 2 to 3 months of operations, okay? When you're talking about financial health of an enterprise fund, you start with that 2 to 3 months, but then you have to add in your debt service requirements, principal and interest on your debt, because a debt service in an enterprise fund, the principal reduces a liability on the statement of net position, and the interest is a non-operating expense. So it doesn't factor into that calculation. The other piece that you want to look at is your capital requirements. What are your capital needs going forward? What is the condition of your water and sewer system, or systems, I should say. And that's really subjective, right? So if you need to replace a portion or all of your water system, you're going to need a lot more than 79% net position, unrestricted net position. So you can't look at it the same way. Just want to point that out. I would say 79%. If you look at the next page, in fact, a 5-year bar graph, this is your total revenues, total expenses, and total net position for the water and sewer fund. And this is where I would say, yeah, that you look at that yellow bar and think, wow, we're loaded, we're rich there. Not so, because if you turn the page, this is just the net position, and the orange part, so page 18 of the handout, the orange part of those bars are what you can't spend. That's invested in your water and sewer systems, net of any related debt. You can't spend your system unless you sold it, and that would be like selling the car to buy gas. It just doesn't make sense. You would never do that. The good news here is if you look at the unrestricted portion, it is growing in each of the past 5 years. So upward trend in that amount that's available for use, which is reflected on the next page as well. 5-year line graph of that percentage. As you can see, it's increasing over the past 5 years. Healthy trend. And then looking forward, on page 20 of the handout, upcoming accounting standards. This is what keeps me employed, I guess, and Ethan. Pages 70 and 71, note 16 starts on page 71, 72. Note 16 details the upcoming accounting standards that will become effective over the next 2 years. There are 4, GASB 101 on compensated absences. So the Governmental Accounting Standards Board writes the rules that we have to follow. GASB Statement 101 defines what a compensated absence is, requires an analysis of whether the leave is more likely than not to be used or otherwise paid out. If it's more likely than not to be used or otherwise paid out, you have to record a liability on your government-wide financial statements in your full accrual statements. That is effective for the year that you're in now. GASB Statement 102 on certain risk disclosures requires an assessment of whether a concentration or constraint makes the government, the city, vulnerable to risks, events that could have an impact on the government. One of the examples they use in the standard is if you had a particular vendor that you relied upon heavily and they go out of business, that could have an impact on the city's operations. You would disclose that in the notes to the financial statements. Also effective for June 30, 2025. GASB Statement 103 on financial reporting model improvements. So this is a change to GASB Statement 34, which was 2003, I think, was when it was effective. So we have changes to the management's discussion and analysis requirements. We have changes to how unusual or infrequent items are reported. Changes to the proprietary fund financial statement presentation. They define some things a little better for us. And then reporting for major component units and budgetary comparison information. So that one's kind of a big one. That'll have some impact to the look of the financial statements, but that is effective for the year ending June 30, 2026. And then most recently, GASB Statement 104 on the disclosure of certain capital assets. That requires a separate disclosure of leased assets, subscription-based information technology arrangements, or the leasing of software. And other capital assets. Currently, they're all in one note disclosure. What GASB 104 does is it requires you to break them out. They can still be in the same note, but you have to break out those different types of intangible assets separately and disclose those. I went as fast as I could, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I actually have one. So, page 19, we're seeing this increase in the unrestricted fund position. I didn't ask you this when we met before, but is there a recommended amount?
No, and that's where I said it's all subjective. It depends really on your age and condition of your systems. So that's where you would pair it against your capital asset management records. You know, what's the planned timing for projects to make repair, replacement, improvement of those systems, and you would build that into your goal, right? Your projected net position.
Okay, thank you.
But you also have to consider the debt and operation as well. So.
Aren't compensated absences reported as a liability in our financial statements presently?
They are in the government, in the full accrual statements, they are. What this new standard will do is it again, better defines what a compensated absence is. In the old statement, 62, I think it was, compensated absences were considered to be sick and vacation time. We have so many other categories of time, banks, that people use. Right, and so it factors all of those in, it defines all of those for us. But it goes back to an assessment of the likelihood of whether or not that time is going to be used or otherwise paid out. And we don't necessarily do that assessment currently. We just take your pay rate at the end of the year times the number of hours in your bank, and that's what's booked as a liability in accordance with your own policies that are set up. So it probably won't change much here, but it's a new look at these liabilities that maybe aren't on the books.
The other thing I wanted to ask you was, when I started in 2015, the OPEB, the retiree health care and the post-employment benefits, we were pay-as-you-go about 5%. We're now at about 65%.
Yep.
And, the commission's done a really great job, too, with the pension, which was slightly under 60, and now we're, significantly higher.
Yep.
I know you do this in other communities. Our residents have been great partners too. They've helped us with the public safety pension millage and approved some things that, allowed us to free up other money for roads and repairs. But how do we, in these other communities that you go in and do this for, how is our pension and OPEB funding stacking up against similarly sized clients of yours around the state?
So I would say your pension is in line with others. And the reason for that is that you're required statutorily to make your pension contributions.
Right.
You are not required statutorily to make your OPEB contributions. Sitting at 65% funded, I'd say you're better than a lot of them because it just simply isn't required. Now, the state has had some grants and they've actually called a lot of attention to the underfunding of these promises to your employees. And so with the Form 5572 that gets filed annually as well, they're paying attention. And the target for OPEB was 40%. That's what the state minimum is. And for pensions, it was 60%. So, yeah, and you're above both of those.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to accept the 2023-24 financial statements?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any public comments?
Sure. I enjoyed your presentation, and I serve on some.
Nobody enjoyed it.
Yeah, you know, I did. I serve on some audit committees, and I was, to ask you a question. How do we test the internal controls here at Huntington Woods from an accounting standpoint? Is there an ongoing cadence where you come in here and conduct some type of audit of it?
We do. We look at major transaction cycles. I don't know if you're talking to my phone or not, but, so we look at receipts, we look at accounts payable disbursements, we look at payroll, utility billing, and we perform what we call a walkthrough. So we make a sample selection, and walk it through the system of internal controls. We document what the internal controls are that were established here at the city, and make sure that the city is in compliance with their own rules, right, their own internal controls. And we do that on an annual basis. And, you know, we have to build in an element of unpredictability, so we try to change it up from year to year.
And are these announced or unannounced audits?
All these are all announced. I mean, it's part of the financial statement audit process, which the city is required to have an audit by state law, Public Act 2 of 1960.
Right. Thank you.
I think you have
Oh, I'm sorry.
Two quick questions. First one is on slide 12. The transfers out is 33%, so it's a third of the expenditures. And it's not clear what makes up that transfers out. I mean, I'm all for other when it's like 2 or 3%. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong, it's just unclear for,
It's not other, I will tell you that.
Yeah.
It's transfers to other funds of the city. And in the,
we didn't get the long version, sorry.
what?
I said we didn't get the long version.
No,
so
no,
I
I
apologize.
realize. I was gonna try to, I can't answer that from memory, so I have
I think the majority of it goes to parks.
Yeah, and so the general fund generally does a sizable transfer from the general fund, which is City Hall,
Mhm.
Public Works, to the recreation fund, which is responsible for you know, rec programming, the pool, things like that. There's also transfers to, and I have a list in my office, but there's transfers to capital planning, which is different capital projects around the city. There's transfers for retiree health. There's transfers for OPEB liability. There's a transfer for major and local roads for like patching
Sure.
and things like that.
All fine, I just,
So, yeah, it's all,
Can I follow up with that? You said there's like 6 million of expenditures, that's not Parks and Recs, and the Parks and Recs is coming from the transfers out thing?
how did you break that out?
So total transfers out of the general fund were $3,075,970. $1 million of that went to the recreation fund.
Okay.
So the recreation fund expenditures were 2.3 million, that's outside of the general fund.
The recreation fund runs on a mix of programming fees, general fund transfers, rental fees, things like that.
So that expenditure, it doesn't, not comprised of that 6 million?
No, that $1 million
expenditure.
is just the transfer from the general fund to the recreation fund.
so the Parks and Rec runs at a loss then?
Correct.
Yes.
Got it. And then my last question is, the unfunded liability, I know is at 68%, which you can do glass half full, glass half empty, is higher than what it needs to be and higher than what it was, but still can be better. Have we looked, I ran a pension that we actually looked at and wanted buying out. Do we know what the rough estimate of the unfunded liabilities are now in a dollar, in a cash value? And would it make sense to buy an annuity and transfer it to an insurance company so we at least have a defined liability going forward, as opposed to being subject to the market interest rates? I'm not saying it is, I haven't looked at the numbers, but.
I don't know if that's been measured, right, to be honest with you. I'd say
Annuities are
probably-
typically purchased when it's a higher funding. For example, I think it's one of the gross points, they're at like 105% funded.
Right.
And they purchased an annuity at that point, and that kind of closed out the plan.
Mhm.
We're not in that position right now. The pension plan has been closed for about a decade.
Of course, but you
Right.
still have the tail, which will be done in 30 years, yeah.
Right, right.
But my question is, we should be looking at that every 2 to 5 years to see, because the in theory, people will be dying off if you're still making your payments. You know, at what point in time do those two axes cross?
And we have to do a full, so the state requires for our OPEB plan, we have a continuing disclosure, which is every other year.
Mhm.
But every even year, it's a full audit where we have to compile all of our data, all of our members, ages, the type
Right.
of plan. So every other year, we're looking at, you know, the funding and how, you know, what the trajectory is in order to make those determinations.
And then also, we could always look at, depending on what the funding is pushing people into, you know, giving them the option to take the cash out early. Which, again, I don't know what the unfunded portion is, but it became very advantageous to a plan I operated to the tune of several millions of dollars. I just want to make sure we're looking at it. I'm not saying it's right, I haven't looked at the plan.
Just out of curiosity, like, who manages that fund, the pensions?
I'm sorry.
Is this, I'm sorry?
MERS, Michigan, and
So
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah,
state.
it's public.
Municipal employees' retirements.
Yeah, it's public,
Okay.
yeah.
They're technically the fiduciary.
Do we know what the, just unfunded dollar-wise, just roughly?
So
I mean, I know it's not exact, because it's floating every day, of course.
it is, and this is measured as of December 31st of 2023, so there is a timing difference, which is allowed by the
Sure.
accounting standards.
Yeah.
But the net pension liability is at 12/31/2023 was 9.2 million.
The shortfall, or that's the?
That's the net pension, the shortfall.
Shortfall.
That's,
Okay. Then it wouldn't make sense, yeah, it's too big of a number. Okay.
in terms of the OPEB plan, the net OPEB liability was 2.2 million.
And we were in a better position, but the state law change, it required investment smoothing to be changed from 5 to 10 years. We had to lower the assumed rate of return. We had to adopt mortality tables reflecting people living longer. I mean, we took a major hit with like 5 significant factors in a 2-year period. And that
really
did,
nothing changed.
right, and it affected our funding level drastically.
Any comments or questions from the commission? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3 is a matter of consideration of the award to bid, the bid award for traffic signal installation at 11 Mile and Mortensen. Do we have a motion to award this to Rayhorn Electric of Bruce Township in the amount of $379,095.50?
Second.
Ethan, any comments here?
No, this was a carryover from last month. The commission requested more data to be provided regarding the DEI statements and positions of the 3 companies, as well as the engineering firm that we have. Responses were received and sent to the commission from the engineering firm and the bottom 2 bids. So the highest bid did not submit anything, but the highest bid. So that was forwarded to the commission made a determination based on those items.
Any public comments?
I do, somewhat unrelated, is that, you know, there's a lot of conversation right now about DEI. And I think DEI was well-intended, okay, when they came up with the idea, diversity, equity, inclusion. But I think the implementation has a lot of fallacies and failures to it. And I'd like to see if the city of Huntington Woods could rethink their adherence to DEI as many other organizations and companies are doing today. And I think it'd be worthwhile for this city to look at what's going on in this country and what other organizations and cities and communities and businesses that are moving away from DEI. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Stanek, 13108 Talbot Avenue. Given that this decision was delayed a month because of the council's committee's concern about DEI, I I think it might be a good time for the city to actually review what it's accomplished in terms of the workforce, composition of the residents, city zoning ordinances, and just see what progress we've made. There's actually good research that argues that a diverse and inclusive organization performs better. So it's not a trivial issue. It's not a question about magic numbers. It actually has impact on organizational performance. And given the city's commitment to this, I think at some point soon, it would be very helpful to see what the impact has been. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, the First Amendment is helpful.
Comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I'm satisfied with the response. This is the low bidder, and this makes a lot of sense in that, A, it protects the children crossing to go to school. It also allows our public safety department to control this traffic signal so they can get a fire engine out onto 11 Mile as quickly as possible if needed. So there's a lot of benefit to this, and we're getting some state grant money, a legislative appropriation, so I'm all in favor.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4 is a matter of considering approval of the suggested changes to the non-union personnel manual regarding floating holidays.
Yeah, so this is a issue that's been kind of in the works for a while. The city manager put this memo together before he left, on his medical leave, and, basically, in July 2024, or before that, we entered into a new contract with the DPW Workers Union. And one of the big sticking points was floating holidays. So for the last few years, it's been kind of an awkward system where certain buildings would be burning holidays and some would be off, some would be working. And it wasn't cohesive, and the manager felt that we needed to tighten that up. So in the DPW union contract, the DPW workers got more holidays, and that's listed here, the list in this memo. And they received one personal day extra to their bank, but then the floating holiday bank was eliminated. So, for example, January 1, 2025, employees who have served a year or more would be getting their banks renewed. And for the DPW union, it's going to be 80 vacation, or depending on how long you've been there, more. Your usual sick time approval of 8 hours a month. That hasn't changed. Those items haven't changed. 32 personal hours instead of 24, but then no floating holiday bank. When this agreement was ratified, there was discussion saying this should probably be replicated for the non-union employees as well. I know City Hall in particular, there's been holidays where City Hall is closed for business, but then DPW is operating, or the rec center has things, and it's a system that needs to be tightened up. So this, if this language is approved this evening, we would be put into as an addendum to the personnel manual for non-union employees, and then that bank structure would be extended to non-union employees as well. That includes 2 at public safety, 3 or 4 at public works, and then all of the City Hall full-time, and the rec center full-time, and the library full-time. So the public safety has a different arrangement entirely under both of their unions. And that was ratified also back in the past couple of years with their 2 union contracts.
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Second. Any public comment? Comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, looking at this from a diversity perspective and thinking about any of our city employees who would fall under this that are Jewish and would be interested in taking off for religious holidays, how would that impact them? Whereas perhaps they wouldn't need to take off Good Friday, but they would then be using their personal leave days to accommodate their religious observances.
We haven't had, I see your point, we haven't had a lot of discussions on that as an organization. I think if there was a somebody was really, really concerned about that, I think the city manager could be accommodating for that. I don't know his thoughts on that, but I don't see why that would be a problem if there was somebody that had a specific tradition or need to take a day off versus another. That would have to be a decision made by the manager's office.
But there would be the opportunity for them to switch out holidays or comp time.
Yeah, as much as authority as the manager has, I think.
I mean, we might have to do a letter of agreement with the union or something like that, because this is a collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah.
This is set in stone, so
Union agreement.
they bargained for this. So if we're gonna change it, we're gonna have to enter into an MOU or an LOA.
There's a little bit of interplay here because we have three unions and then the non-union,
Right.
and so there is, Commissioner Rozell's correct, there is limited what, because if we give it to the non-union, then all of a sudden the bargaining units want that, and that would create friction, and this is kind of why this is before you this evening, is we're trying to equal out so that there's not, this leads to less rancorous collective bargaining.
Right, just trying to understand from the perspective of the elimination of the floating holiday and the impact on, people's flexibility in terms of, the holidays that they choose to celebrate based on their traditions versus what has been dictated by the collective bargaining agreement. So if there's flexibility that exists, I just want to make sure that we're being inclusive.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5 is a matter of considering approval of the request for qualifications, the RFQ for the planning consultant to update the Parks and Recreation Master Plan.
As the mayor said, this is basically a bid, type of bid opening to receive proposals, so these firms will be able to bring the proposals to work on the Parks and Rec master plan. There's a selection committee that will comprise Chris, Tracy, and myself. These will be due in January. I'll expect that we'll be reviewing these proposals mid to late January and bringing appropriate recommendations to the commission in February or March.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Mayor?
How about any public comment first?
Jessica Downey, 13160 Kingston. While I agree it's necessary to have a plan for continued maintenance, redevelopment, etc., and you all know I've been fighting for nearly a decade to get maintenance and improvement at Vale Jones Park, my concern is with the cost of a new planning consultant and the length of time it will take to see some sustainable action. The RFQ statement in the agenda packet states that the city will be seeking a planning consultant to update the Parks and Rec master plan. The RFQ states, as part of the planning process, the City Commission and Parks and Rec Advisory Board desire to survey the community regarding current likes and future expectations regarding quality of life and redevelopment, and that community engagement will be a critical element of this process. But the city paid thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for MKSK to do just that last year with the Parks Priority Survey. I believe at this point the city has cut ties with MKSK, but the work being sought, again, has already been completed and paid for. So I guess my questions are, what is the budget for this process? How will the process be different this time? And will you actually listen to the responses from your residents? Thank you.
I'll start again. I just also want to suggest that, given that you just recently rejected a consultant's report on the parks, and I think rightly so, you might want to send, in addition to the old Parks and Rec report, plan, you might want to send them a copy of the plan you rejected on the parks and say, don't do this. And then, even better perhaps, you might send them a copy of Don Carpenter's 2018 report on stormwater management for the city, a 36-page document that lays it all out, and tell them, pay attention to this. I've given the city's city manager a copy of this report. I assume you've all read it many years ago. But if you need a copy, Chris has it. I'm happy to send it to you as well.
Comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, so, I mean, that goes along with what my comment was going to be, and that was, we paid MKSK this money, and I specifically requested that the first thing they do is meet with the policy-making body of the city commission, to get specific direction on what was gonna happen. That did not occur. I asked the city manager to do that at least 5 times. It never occurred. We ended up getting a product that is not what we wanted. So if this is gonna be the process that's gonna happen with this, I'm not voting to pay the bill. So we will meet with whoever is selected first. They will get clear direction from this commission as to the direction we wanna go, and then we can move forward. I am not having a repeat of that piece of garbage we got from the prior consultant. It's not gonna happen. So I just wanna make that clear. I know our city manager's not here. You can watch the recording at his convenience to hear my comments, but they will meet with this commission. Step 1. Step 2 is involving Parks and Recreation, the community, and doing all that. This is a necessary step that we need to go through. I don't think it impacts us moving forward with Val Jones and other parks. I don't want you to think this is a delay tactic or some type of stall tactic. We are still moving forward with looking at these parks, but this is sort of an overall requirement that we need to look at every so often. But I'm irritated with what happened last time, and I will not accept a repeat of that. Thank you.
Any other comments?
No, I mean, I'm okay moving forward, but I just want to make it clear to city administration that step 1 is meeting with the city commission.
We'll make that clear.
This is, you're asking for the first step to be once a vendor is selected.
That's right.
in the RFQ
That's right,
process.
100%. Or when the bill comes, I'm a no vote. All right,
We'll have them send it to your house.
don't do that. Go right in the trash.
All right. Anyone else?
Would it make sense, Joe, in your opinion, to have somebody from a member of the commission participate in the selection committee for,
I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. I think it's a good suggestion.
so would that be something that we could add on, Mr. Mayor?
Have a member of the commission.
Sure.
on the selection committee.
Right now, it's Chris, Wilson, Tracy, and Ethan.
If you guys could just do an amendment to your motion, so that's in the record, if you wanna add somebody.
Do we have a volunteer?
I will volunteer.
Okay, Commissioner Olsman, is that an acceptable amendment to your motion?
It is.
You accept that? Commissioner Steiner?
I just, yes.
Okay.
Question, excuse me, is not MKSK also doing the city's sustainability plan? And I think we can expect the same results.
Call the motion. Ready to vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6 is considering approval of a contract with Pyrotechnic Fireworks for a fireworks display on July 4th, 2025 and July 4th, 2026. Normally, we only do an annual contract for the fireworks, but July 4th of 2026 is the 250th anniversary of the US, so it is becoming a very popular date. It's also a Saturday. So it's becoming a very popular date for fireworks contracts. So our vendor reached out to us and said the date is filling up fast. If we want to have fireworks 2 years from now, you'd like to get us on the books. So that's the reason that we have a 2-year contract in front of us tonight. This is in the amount of $35,000 for each year. Last year, I believe, our cost was $34,500, so it's a slight increase. We have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any public comment? Questions or comments from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is board and commission and committee appointments. We had a long night last night at our special meeting interviewing people that were interested in helping out the city and volunteering their time to serve on boards and commissions. We had a great group of people. As always, we have excellent people that live in Huntington Woods that are willing to volunteer their time to help us out. And unfortunately, we don't have enough positions to put everybody to work, but we got most of them a job. So I'd like to start by asking for a motion for the mayoral appointments. For the planning commission, I'd like to appoint April Seward and Adam Wallace to 3-year terms expiring 12/31/27. And for our commission representative, which is a 1-year term, Jessica Steinhardt. The Historic District Commission, I'd like to reappoint for 3-year terms Michael Burstein, Chris Vogelheim, and Jeffrey Apt. And for the Library Advisory Board, an appointment for a 1-year term for a student, Lilac Bycat. And also a reappointment of a student, Alyssa Brisack, for 1 year. And then 2 3-year terms for Beth Applebaum and Bridget McKinley.
I'll move to confirm the mayor's appointments to those boards and commissions.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any public comment?
Is there a process where residents are informed how to apply, how and when to apply for these positions, and if so, how?
The citywide newsletter and the e-blast are the two main ways that we advertise it. Directors of different departments also reach out to people that have been involved in their programs and encourage them to apply. Sometimes it's other people that are already on the board talking to a neighbor or a friend saying, hey, you should apply.
I think it's on the website and the cable
is.
channel
It's
too.
highly detailed and highly aggressive in terms of soliciting.
For the spots.
Still, for involvement, period, and then in certain instances, if you see somebody you think would be a good fit for whichever committee, like we said last night, we were here from roughly 5:30 to 8:30, we had a surplus of highly qualified architects, I mean, people who really bring a lot to the table for like ZBA and planning and things like that. So we had a lot of applications and we had some really good candidates. But the answer to your question is that we actively solicit people for involvement with the city. You have to.
Yeah, and just to learn something, only if you recall, for the library board, what sort of applicants did you get?
Well, we're appointing a group that has been on there, and we had some student representatives. The only vacancies this time were the student representatives.
So the 2 reappointments, and those were 3-year terms?
Yes.
No.
And just out of curiosity, how many people are on the library board?
7?
7, I
Seven,
think.
I believe,
7.
yeah.
You can do 2 3-year terms.
So person serves a 3-year term, and if they want to be re-upped for another, it's not like it's an election. We're happy that someone's volunteering to
Right.
serve, and
They've been a participating member of the board.
and is there a paid staffer who weighs in on how they're participating?
Each of the boards has somebody from staff that is in charge of them. And we also have commission liaisons to each of them.
From 40 reporting to, yeah, no, it's not something I've thought about. It's interesting. I think, the one thing probably the only thing the gentleman said who left that I would agree with, if you're conscious that there's actually on these committees age diversity and some range, so it's not monolithic, I think that would serve the city well.
Can I make a comment? Naomi Lobel, 13135 Sherwood, and I sit on the Parks and Rec Board. And I have been on the board, I believe, since March, possibly April, and in that time we have not had the commission liaison attend. There may have been some confusion about who that person was, but in any case, as a board member, I really want to urge you as commission members to come as often as possible to the boards that you're assigned to, or at least to respond to emails when you're copied on everything that's happening and we're looking for your help and assistance. I believe it's part of what we have elected you into place to do is to assist in those parts as well. Thanks.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner Rozell?
I'll move to appoint as a student representative on the Environmental Sustainability Committee, Ari Sklar, and appoint on the Arts and Garden Board, Sarah Postema, and then reappoint to the Ethics Committee, Ben King and Ellen Kogan-Lipton, and then reappoint to Environmental Sustainability Committee, Betsy Zobeltar and Rachel Pollack.
Second.
Any public comment? Comments or questions from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Mayor Pro Tem Olsman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So with respect to the Zoning Board of Appeals, I'm going to move that we appoint Sheldon Cohn and Jessica Blake to fill the vacancies. And I'll move for the reappointment of Ben Falick, Andy Doctoroff, and Michael Brooks to positions on the ZBA. With respect to the Senior Advisory Committee, I would move that we appoint Marjorie Cohn to the vacancy and move for the reappointment of Foon, not sure how to say the last name, not the last name, and Marcy Peters to the existing positions on the Senior Advisory Committee. And then we have the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. We're moving to reappoint Mr. Joseph Egan and Sarah McDonald.
Second.
Any public comment? Comments from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Commissioner Steinhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to appoint Jeff Wickersham to the Anti-Racism Advisory Committee, the vacancy on that board, and to reappoint to that board Katie Boulier and Jessica Lynn Edwards, and to reappoint to the Board of Review Ben Shipper, and for the Construction and Property Maintenance Committee to reappoint Richard Cullen, Blake Moore, and Jeremy Wolf.
Second.
Any public comment?
Sorry, we have two students for Parks and Rec Advisory Board too that were supposed to be approved.
Are they reappointments? Or?
No, they're brand new and they've already come to the meeting. I don't know if you guys got that.
Did we appoint some student reps to the Parks and Rec a few months ago? You're saying we never appointed them?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I don't know, I honestly don't know, because I.
we'll, if you could get those names to Heidi for us,
Absolutely.
we'll take care of that. Comments or questions? Commission, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item number 8,
Hold on for 1 second. Did you do the reappointments for the environmental sustainability? Okay. And the communication committee?
we have not, no,
Okay.
it's up in.
It's on hold.
You're holding, okay.
Yes, we want to have some discussion with the city manager about the role of the communication committee.
Okay.
Engaging them a little more than they have been. Ready, item number 8 is the library surveillance system.
Okay, now this was a late add to the agenda. We emailed this out to the commission, I believe it was yesterday. So as part of the 2023-2024 budget, the commission budgeted $150,000 for shelving units for the library. Because we did the shelving study the year before that. The library director met with the shelving study people, the firm that provided that study, and it was determined that adding shelving would not really impact significantly in a positive way the library. So Director Henry requested that we cancel that particular project and instead put in some cameras for the library because there's been some issues of vandalism going on recently, and she thinks that would mitigate that problem. In addition, this would save the city over $100,000 that could be used for future projects. We felt that this would go to the commission because it was money originally approved in the budget. We're just basically switching up one project for the other, and the excess funds will be in fund balance for future use. And the quote is attached for the cameras.
Do we have a motion to award this contract to DA Central of Oak Park in the amount of $39,359?
So moved.
Second.
Any public comment?
We're getting 2 questions just because I'm here. One is it a proprietary system?
Yes.
And then,
Steve, if you could come
sorry.
to the mic.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Everyone will hear you.
Everyone will
Everyone will
tell,
hear
but I apologize. Is it a proprietary system? And then who's monitoring the cameras?
Public safety is monitoring the cameras. DA Central's done a lot of work for us already, outfitting cameras in the rec center area and at public safety as well, monitoring
Okay.
the City Hall parking lot area.
So it's the same,
It's the same firm. We're just augmenting.
right, but the software that runs it, is it proprietary to them?
Yes.
So we're, I just want to make sure that everyone knows that if we sign a contract for this, then the cameras and the software that are running this.
Yes, so we already run the software on our.
Okay, so it's just
existing-
adding.
Yeah, it's just augmenting what we already have.
I've seen that mistake made a bunch of times, so I just.
Comments or questions from the commission?
I know Commissioner Steinhardt asked this in an email, and I think it's important to point out that the vandalism isn't, it's more like mischief stuff, like getting into a back room and disconnecting the internet so that all the computers stop working. It's not any like spray painting or damaging. It's just kind of malicious mischief type stuff that's occurring.
That was the word that she used. The word that is more appropriate is mischief stuff. But we take this stuff very seriously.
Well, right, it's a pain when they can't check books out or people can't access the internet.
Right,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, I was just, hadn't really heard about all of those events happening,
Because they
so.
weren't serious.
Right, but I was glad that Deb was able to summarize it for us and provide us with the rationale for the change in plans.
We were looking to add this to January, but I wanted to, because of that, of the mischief aspect of it, we wanted to get this done sooner.
Is there gonna be a camera outside as well, checking the known?
Yeah, there's a
area?
There's a list of cameras that they're gonna put.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. City managers report, Ethan, do you have anything to fill
I
in?
have only, so the city manager is out until middle of the month, closer to Christmas, he'll phase back in. Until then, department heads are providing ample coverage. I did want to share one thing. I think I hope it made it in the packet. If not, I'll send it separately. I had a meeting with our MML workers' comp rep, and he was gushing and good things to say about Huntington Woods, so I thought I'd share that. We got our, I think it's called our experience modification factor, and that governs our discount for workers' comp insurance, and that is 0.87, which is for what we have going on at the level of services that we have in the city. That is amazing. So I wanted to pass that on to the commission. Saves us money.
All right. Thank you. Are there any questions for Ethan?
I was wondering, Ethan, if you might have an update on when the new street signs will be installed.
If not, I can send an email about that in the morning. I can talk to Rocco.
Thank you.
Commissioner comments, I'm gonna actually go off the rails a little bit and start with our city attorney.
Am I able to comment to the commission or no? Or to the city manager's report? No. Okay.
Carol Rosati, our long-time city attorney, has decided to retire, so I thought I'd give her an opportunity to say a few words if you'd like.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I've decided it's time, so, but it has been a real pleasure and honor to work with this city. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Commission, the staff, everyone, just wonderful. So I will miss all of you. You all have my phone number. I still expect to get some calls now and then, but I'm gonna start doing some different things with my life now.
Well, we really appreciate all your advice over the years. Thanks for your dedication and service.
Thank you.
During some contentious matters that we've had with the city, Carol and I have frequently disagreed and frequently sparred.
But I'm right.
I'll
Well,
second that.
She was once, but we're going to be her colleague that will be coming in is someone that we're familiar with and who's been very good. And when I first ran for the city commission in 2009, one of my signature goals was to have the city retain new counsel at that time to represent us, both here and in a prosecutorial capacity in Oak Park, which has been Carol's law firm, Chuck Snell, her partner, who by all accounts from everyone I talked to has been exemplary in that role. And we've had nothing but good service and good advice and good counsel from Carol. It's in a little bit related to what Mr. Shostak brought up, the question of deciding issues that he raised, the issue of who gets access, who do you give a permit to, who you don't give a permit to. I mean, these are issues that are not treated lightly by the city, ever. And our job is to serve all the residents in this capacity. And even though I may think somebody is right, somebody else may think I'm not right. And as Carol would be more than happy to tell you, we have had extensive conversations about these topics, not just now. These go back a few years. It's not now. The First Amendment is it's a great thing, and it raises a lot of important questions from time to time. And no one should think that we are just willy-nilly with regard to, well, we got to let them do it, or we don't have to let them do it, or this one can or this one can't. Some of you may remember a few years ago the controversy over the drag queen story time at the library, and all the controversy, if you will, that it raised, the same kind of issues. You know, can you intervene and tell people what they can go see or not see because one person thinks it's wonderful and creative and the other person thinks it's disgusting? Well, very important. And Carol and I have, like I said, we have had multiple lengthy conversations about these topics. And as somebody who, as I frequently say, loves lawsuits based on the kind of law that I practice, I've always done my best to keep the city of Huntington Woods out of litigation because it's very expensive for a city our size to get involved in battle royales over things where we could not, should not, and are likely to lose. And Carol's been a great partner for our city with regard to these topics, so I thought I could kill two birds with one
I've
stone.
certainly handled enough First Amendment laws
Yes, you have.
through my career, so, yeah, I'm very
And
familiar
for
with
many
the
years,
area.
we had the counsel of, he was a friend, personal friend, is Professor Robert Zedler at Wayne State University, who's constitutional law professor, internationally recognized, and we've gone to him on many occasions.
And he's agreed with me.
Huh?
And he's agreed with me.
You know, and he provided advice too. He's retired now, but he was tremendous help on issues like that in the past. Permits for people who were soliciting. A lot of things come up. It's not just one thing. A lot of things come up about that. And the question is, what do you do? How do you do it? And how do you avoid stepping, into a landmine where you shouldn't involving constitutional rights. So, but anyway, we salute Carol and look forward to continued friendship.
Thank you.
Enjoy your retirement.
Yeah.
That's it.
I have no other comments.
Okay.
You've done enough tonight. Easy.
Commissioner Steiner?
No comments.
Okay, no comments for me either. Actually, I'm gonna make one real quick. Ethan, thanks for all your hard work on the audit. It was a lot of work there.
Appreciate that.
We appreciate that, as well as filling in for Chris.
Who
Thanks for everything.
we wish the best to, Chris Wilson, a quick recovery and get him back here. And
With that, do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Carol, you're done.